in my life, everything that's been really dramatically bad has always produced really positive results. It sounds weird to say, but I really believe deep in my heart, I feel that anything that happens to people, you have a choice. You have a choice to really, think about it, feel it, get depressed, get upset, and then get drowned in that negative feeling. Or you have the choice to use that as an opportunity to find something good. And in my life, all of the bad things, even some of the very bad things, have led to the best things.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. This is conversation number 117, and I am absolutely excited that you're here for yet another episode. I'm always going to say that, and I'm always so genuinely pumped that you're here with me. My guest today is an absolute titan. He is the founder and CEO of Redcon1. He is none other than the man, Aaron Singerman. We talked about a lot of great stuff. He actually said one of the coolest and most unique quotes that I've ever heard on the podcast in regards specifically to his children. Stay tuned for that because I was really interested about how he incorporates his kids a little bit into his business, which is massive and it's growing so fast. Then I also had some questions about his relationship with his spouse and how he maintains that despite everything else that we talked about in the conversation. We talked about some of the behaviors that led to his success after him having a drug addiction. What incident, what moment in his life tore him out of that addiction and into this new life that he created for himself? What were some of the behaviors that led to that and that complemented that decision, that 100% decision that he made that day? So a lot of good stuff going on tonight. As always, remember, you can find this episode, all the other conversations and the contemplations on kristoflewis.com/podcast or on any of your favorite podcast apps. You can find me on Instagram at Kristof Lewis. The most awesome way to help the podcast out is to just share it with somebody else. Tell as many people as you possibly can about this podcast and have them download every single episode that's out there. There's like 180 or 90. There's probably like 190 episodes out already. Check them out. There's a lot of stuff on there. There's twice as many episodes on audio. There's a bunch of content, extra videos on YouTube as well. So head over there and give a sub. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I've been following you for a little while, and it's absolutely my pleasure to be on here.
Yeah. Thank you. That's an honor to even hear that. I really appreciate that. I love doing these. I love having people on here. Everybody brings just such a uniqueness to the show. And I just told you 2 seconds ago off camera, there were some things I wanted to talk to you about specifically. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But before we get into the rest of the episode, could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Aaron Singerman. I'm the CEO and founder of Redcon1, which is the fastest growing sports supplement company in history. So we sell everything from protein powder to pre-workout and protein bars. We sell to the United States military, so we're on all forward operating bases, all PXs and exchanges around the world. We're also in Vitamin Shop, GNC, 80 countries around the world, grocery stores, convenience stores, and growing very quickly. And I've been doing this for about a decade, and before that, I was working in the bodybuilding and fitness industry, covering the sport of bodybuilding and fitness around the world. So I've been very fortunate to be involved with something that I love and I'm passionate about for quite some time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really impressive. So for what it's worth from me, congrats. That's massive. Fastest growing is no small feat. That's really cool, man. And to be doing it for 10 years and then being involved in the scene for so long is incredible. And I think it's really cool because there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons I started this podcast, because even I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do with my life. And a lot of people that I came in contact with did not know what they wanted to do with their life. So I started this up and I was like, hell, I'm just going to interview people and share their stories, why they got into it. But it's cool to see that you I mean, so you were in that for 10 years. How many years were you in the field before you started the company?
Well, so this company, Redcon1, has only been around for about 4 years.
Oh, 4 years.
I've owned
Okay.
other supplement companies, and I've been involved in sports supplements for a while. But so for me personally, I was the same as you. I didn't know initially what I
Yeah.
wanted to do with my life. I went down a path of kind of like not knowing, and certainly, for me,
Yeah.
I have a history of drug abuse, of
Okay.
addiction. So, for a long time, I was really, really lost.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally came out of all that, I thought to myself, like, what do I want to do? What am I
Mm-hmm.
passionate about? And the only thing that I could think of was bodybuilding. And for me,
Yeah.
I am by nature, bodybuilding is a lot about genetics. You can do hard work, you can eat right, you can take the right supplements and everything. And if the genetics aren't there, so for me, I am by nature a tall, skinny Jewish guy. So
Yeah.
genetics are not on my side,
Yeah.
right? So I knew right when I said to myself, I want to do something in bodybuilding. I knew I couldn't be Ronnie Coleman or Dorian Yates or Jake. I knew I couldn't be a professional bodybuilder who made a living. So I figured, like, what else could I do? There must be something to make money, enough money to at least support myself and not be like in poverty and do
Yeah.
something I like. And that's really what I went after 100%. And
Wow.
yeah, so that happened not, 14, 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And I went full bore and I did everything I possibly could do and
Mm-hmm.
made a career in that industry.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's why I asked that question, because it exposed one of the things you were talking about, drug addiction. And I actually have a really good friend who was your episode or guest number 117. And my buddy, like, those are the only people that had faith in me when I first started this podcast like a year and a half ago. And he was a drug addict. He dropped out of high school. We were friends and we kept in touch. And he was all the way back episode number 8 with me. And one of the things that he exactly similar story where he came out of it and bodybuilding, weightlifting,
Oh, wow.
all of that stuff, same exact thing. And he's actually starting up a rehab company right now. So or a rehab center, I should say, to help people. So I think it's really cool to see the similarities between you all and see that as well. So I think that's really cool. Oh, was that something that you struggled with for a while in your life? And like my immediate follow-up question would be like, what really pulled you out of that stage in your life, that time in your life, and pulled you into the bodybuilding?
Yeah. So, I struggled with it a lot for quite a while. I mean, I was one of the people, I was a kid, and I also didn't finish high school.
Yeah.
And I never went to college or anything. So it's also similar.
Yeah.
So as a kid in high school, I was very interested in performance enhancing. So I figured, like, hey, I could take steroids and I could gain more muscle and I could perform better. And I was interested in anything like that. And because this is when I trace it back. I think because when I was 17, I took steroids for the first time and I stuck a needle in myself. I think that kind of opened up the gateway. But I think I had also some of the same things. If you can alter your physique by taking a hormone, right, or steroid, you can also alter your mental state by taking a drug. And it's in the same vein to some degree. I also took, incidentally, when I was 5 years old, my parents put me on Ritalin. So I think all of that is somehow connected.
Okay.
You can concentrate. You take a pill.
Sure.
It's going to help you concentrate. And you take a drug, it's going to make you feel happier. You're going to take a steroid, it's going to make your muscles bigger, right? And I think they're all to some degree connected. So for me, from the time that I was around 18, I was dabbling in injectable drugs. Nuban was the drug at the time, it's a narcotic antagonist. It's not popular, and it really wasn't then. Just popular in the bodybuilding community, but if you inject yourself, you feel kind of high, not super high, but kind of high.
Sure.
And then as I got older, Oxycontin became a big thing. And then I was in New Orleans for Katrina when I was 25. Hurricane Katrina happened. I moved to Houston, and Houston, it was very difficult to find Oxycontin, so I ended up switching to heroin, and because it was cheaper and easier to find. And I did that for a few years. But what really happened for me that crystallized everything, like the epiphany moment, was I was living with a girl who was selling cocaine. Her old boyfriend was a very big cocaine dealer, and he was killed. And instead of kind of moving out of the scene, the girl ended up taking over those connections and selling the same cocaine to other dealers, the same guys that were buying from him. And everybody loved her because she was this tiny, tiny little white girl. These are gangbangers, basically, who were buying from her. And I wasn't around. I'd have to leave whenever the deals went down because they didn't want – what they loved about her was she was unintimidating, right?
Sure.
not scary. If you're buying a kilo of cocaine, somebody could kill you and take your money, right?
Yeah.
And on the flip side, they could kill her and take her cocaine.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, there was kind of like a simpatico, and everybody seemed to like her. And so I lived with her, and I had unlimited cocaine. And so we would do cocaine, inject cocaine all day long, 100 plus shots a day of cocaine. And she would make her money and everything. And one day, one of my friends came over, and we were doing drugs. Me and her left the room, and when we came back, he was dead. And he had OD'd, and he had defecated, shit himself.
Yeah.
And his body was beginning rigor mortis, and it was super shocking. Unfortunately, I had been around death before up close, but because he was my friend, it wasn't just somebody that I didn't really know. And we were like, I was there next to him, and so instead of her being like sad, she got really angry because I wouldn't move his body. So she wanted me to put him in his truck and drive him down the road. And I've watched CSI New York and Christian books to know that's not the thing to do.
Yeah, so it's not going to work out.
Look, he died he's accidental. If I take his body, put him in his truck or drive, I can't do it. And so she started yelling at me, and I was like, no. And she started punching me and hitting me and just freaking out. So you got me getting punched and hit and screamed at, and my friend dead, and the smell and everything. And something about all of that like crystallized in my brain where I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to die. Something bad is about to happen to me. And instead of staying there and dealing with her, I literally turned around, ran out the door, got in my car, drove back to my apartment, locked the door, and basically said to myself, like, I'm going to kick this. I'm going to get off of the drugs. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to die. And that was the decision. And I think that for a lot of people, because I talk to people that occasionally, I try not to, it's not my thing to necessarily try to like be the one to help everybody, because my situation, I feel like is a little different, right? So your friend may be more traditional. So like, for example, like I will still have a drink of alcohol. I would never, ever suggest anybody that's been in my situation to say, hey, you can have a beer now and then, because almost everybody can. So I try not to like preach about this type of thing. But for me, when that happened, I made a real decision. And I think that's really what it comes down to for most people, making a true, honest decision where you're 100% certain that you will never do it again. And that part of your life is over and you'll never come back. And I think in life, it's not just with drugs, but with anything, to make a true, honest decision where you're 100% committed and there's no way you'll rather die than go back. Yeah. I think most people always in their brain, like when I think of addicts that I know, who I talk to, they always have in their head somewhere, listen, my husband, my brother gets married, I can have a drink, right? I could probably do this again just casually once I get to a certain level. And that little bit of doubt where they're saying, hey, it wasn't that bad, or maybe I could do it again a little bit, or I could have a tiny bit of cocaine, right? I think that's where that little doubt or that little thing in your brain becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until one day you say, fuck it. Yeah. I'm going to be okay. Right. And so for me, that one event crystallized and truly penetrated me to such a degree that I've never been tempted ever again. And I've never done any of that again. And I've never looked back. I didn't have a lot of the things where people say they had dreams about it or thought about it or contemplated it. It just never happened for me again. I didn't go to NA or AA or any of that stuff.
That's crazy. But I think that shows the willpower, the power of the mind. Like when you make that 100% decision, when you'd rather face death than go back to that. And I was kind of thinking when you were talking too, it's like, obviously we're talking about drugs right now, and like if you do a little bit, you can go back to it. But I think it's like, I even had a conversation. I'll say it here, like with my wife, about saying, don't talk negative about yourself, even if it's the small things. Because I swear to God, you have a little bit of drugs, you can go back to it full blown. If you're talking negative about yourself, you can go full blown, just talking bad about yourself and getting down on yourself. And I think that's the kind of the point you were making. It could be with anything, like you were saying, it doesn't have to be like that. And yeah, it was definitely a little bit different for my buddy. And I was thinking, I had two other people on here, so you'd be the fourth that graciously shared that part of their life with us. And I think it's really important to show that, like, I'm not just talking about people that are successful. I'm so happy for people that are just successful, but frankly, I don't give a shit about that. I want to talk about people that are giving me this story, giving me the real raw story, and then are also going out there and sharing that story and helping other people as well. So I'm really grateful that you did share that with me. I think it's crazy that I don't know if it sounds crazy to me, but I think it's a little bit more accepted in today's society. You said you were like 5 years old with Ritalin, and I think we live in a society where that's just okay. Like that's just the way things are. We give people pills to kind of subdue some of the feelings and things that they're having, and then you're 17 years old and you start with the steroids and you see this path. But I think it's insane that you able to. I mean, I'm just thinking like that's an insane situation to be in with your friend and your girlfriend, and to walk away from that, even because I think being in a state that you were in, maybe it could have gone the other way, but for you to, for you to go away and do that. So what I take away from that, and for all the people listening, is that like, even in insanely shitty times like that, you still can make a decision. Like you still don't have to succumb to like what your girlfriend's saying. Like I watched 100 episodes of like CSI and like Forensic Files. Like that would not have worked well for you, man. That would have worked really bad. We would not have been having this conversation, you know? So like, I'm glad you did that, but I want to dig even farther back to some of the thing you said. You said you did what you had to do to make it happen. Like it was that coincides with that 100%. So I think that's really important when you make up your mind to do something. It's like we were saying on the opposite end, like you say, the little things can build up to the big things when you're talking badly about yourself, and also the big things when you make this huge, momentous, massive decision, 100%, I'm not going to do it, or I am going to do it. That ultimately changes your life. And now I'm sitting here looking at you through this camera, and I'm like able to have this conversation because you made that decision all those years ago. And so to me, there's just a lot of awesomeness coming out of a shitty situation, and it's so cool to see that success. Because one of the other people I think about that's been on this podcast is Grant Cardone, and I think a lot of people don't know that he was a drug addict, and he shared that with us as well on the podcast, and he's obviously had massive success as well. So it's so comforting, frankly, to be able to hear people share their stories like that, because I always want people to share their stories. So thank you for doing that, because I was going to ask like, what's your shift in mentality, but you kind of covered that already. So I think it's really interesting. There wasn't really a shift. It was just kind of like a decision because of that situation. Were there any more or any other behaviors that came out of that led to your success ultimately? Like you had this shift in mentality, and like any other behaviors that essentially were born from that day?
Sure. Well, I can tell you this. The one thing is that you mentioned just a moment ago is that, for me personally, in my life, everything that's been really dramatically bad has always produced really positive results.
Sure.
It sounds weird to say, but I really believe deep in my heart, I feel that anything that happens to people, you have a choice. You have a choice to really, think about it, feel it, get depressed, get upset, and then get drowned in that negative feeling. Or you have the choice to use that as an opportunity to find something good. And in my life, all of the bad things, and some of the very bad things, have led to the best things. So if it wasn't for that happened with my girlfriend and my friend dying, I almost certainly would not be here. Certainly not as housewife, I have 3 little boys, all this business and everything. That had to happen to get here. And all of the bad things that happened have led to where I'm at now. And the one thing that I will say for the listeners out there listening is, if you're going through a bad time, the way that I look at it, and I consciously do this now, is I'm like, wow, that's going to lead to something really good. I in my mind, I think this is the next step to something huge, and it has always been. So this business, Redcon1, began because I had a business partner who was my best friend for over 10 years, and me and him had a partnership dispute where we had this huge, nasty breakup. Basically, it's the best way to put it. We had a very successful business, so we had it was the 27th fastest growing privately owned business in the country, the Inc. 500, and it was doing great. And me and him grew apart. Had this huge fight over really nothing, but it ended up being a culmination of a lot of bad things. And I left the business that I created. That took 5 years to create that success. And when I left, I had one day of feeling sorry for myself. And the next day I said, fuck it, I'm going hard. It's going to be bigger. Whatever I'm going to do is going to be bigger than that. It's going to be better than that. I'm going to learn from my mistakes. And I'm going to create something that's truly unique off of the mistakes. And I'm going to scale all the successes, create an awesome team, learn from my mistakes with the team stuff. And I ended up creating this last Black Friday. On Black Friday, we did more in revenue than that old company did in a year in one gig. So,
Awesome.
And that's strictly because of that falling out, the big fight that
Sure.
seemed like such a terrible, it seemed like a loss of a child, because my business at the time was like, it put enough effort into it that it felt like a child. And then I lost my best friend of 10 years all in the same day, that I only felt sorry for myself for a day before I said, okay, now I got to pick myself up, look for the opportunity. And I have 100 employees and I have a big business, and none of that would have been possible without that big fight. So I think the two things that I've learned, two major things that I've learned from the addiction and coming out of it, is that a true decision, if you're really dedicated and you're 100% focused on something, that you can truly do anything. If you have the grit to go through bad times and understand that anything bad is going to lead to something good. And then the other thing is the ability to, understand that things take time. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's one of the things as an addict, when I stopped being an addict, and focused on trying to figure out how to get into the bodybuilding industry, I had a normal job. I was a personal trainer. I didn't like it. And I could have very easily said, why am I spending all my extra time, doing these articles for nothing and now I emailed every person in the bodybuilding industry trying to say like, hey, give me a shot. Every podcast I listened to, I would write the hosts an email. I wrote hundreds of articles for free for magazines that most of them nobody used. I did anything and everything you could possibly do to get in. And it took me 18 months or so to finally get my first gig to pay me anything. And I could have very easily given up. But if I would have, I also wouldn't be here talking to you. Those are two things that were huge for me.
That hits really hard for me. I don't think it's a secret on this podcast. I do it for free. I don't get paid for it. I'm not monetized. And I actually had somebody ask me about this week. I don't even try to do it. No. You're mentoring me right now. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Like, this podcast is selfishly for me as well, and I share it with thousands of people now. And it's just like, I was thinking, because I've done 180 episodes, 190 episodes for free. And it just, from me to you, it like gives me hope to like keep on going, because it's not the growth that it's good growth, but it's not the growth that I want to see. So like, I know I'm going to keep on going. And I think the second of the two things you said is like the patience. And I know that's one thing that I've not been so good at, and I've been working on it. And, I can see the growth month over month. So I know it's growing, all those things, but I do know that patience is something that I need to personally work on. So I would recommend that to other people. But the first thing you said, which is massive, and I couldn't agree more, is the bad things actually turning out to be the good things. And I think it's like, typically the bad things don't last like that long. Obviously there are certain things that have repercussions that last for a long time, but in your sense, like the business, and it seems like it could be the end of your world at the time. Sure. I am sure, like, that's your baby, that's your passion, that's your best friend. Like you said, like a breakup, absolutely. A relationship's a relationship, regardless, and those are emotional ties. So to break that up and to break the relationship up with the company is huge. But you're damn right, because you are where you are now because of all of those things. So I would encourage anybody listening, like, regardless of what you're going through, and obviously everybody's life and situation and perception of that situation is different, but you're listening to this now, you're going to get through it, like the, what's a cliche saying of, if you're listening to this now, like, you're here. So you've gotten through all your bad days up until this point. So I do love those behaviors, turning the bad into good things, and then also being patient. And I one of the things that I think of immediately is like consistency. And that consistency and patience for me kind of goes together a little bit there. I did want to talk about, I talked about your kids a little bit before we started recording, and I thought it was so cool that it seems that, at least from me, from like seeing social media, at least, like, obviously I'm not there with you guys, but you put your kids out there a little bit, integrate them with the company, like have them like pack in boxes or whatever. And I think it's really cool. So the two things that I wanted to chat about were, one, your kids, but I also wanted to talk about your spouse, in a sense of maintaining a relationship with your spouse while running a massive business and having all employees, and because it can be obviously obsessive. So feel free to talk about whichever one first, or both, or together.
Sure. Well, so for me, I am 100% a obsessive person. So I have obsessive compulsive nature, and I'm honest with myself, and that's probably part of the drug stuff and everything else. I'm very, very over the top, and
Yeah.
Being all in is very easy for me. When I'm excited about something or I want to do something, I go overboard. And for me, two things that have been, I mean, really the main thing that's been immensely important for me is having a family. Because if I didn't have kids and I didn't have a wife, I would be very unbalanced as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife forces me literally to be balanced.
Sure.
Because come 7:00 at night, she'll be texting me, "Where are you? The kids are asking for you," and I can't help but be like, "Oh shit, I better get home," right? Because I want to see him. But if she didn't do that, then I don't know. I honestly don't know. I would just stay at the office. There's always more things I could be doing. That's a continuous thing. So for me, the other thing is that people say that kids are expensive. I hear this all the time, especially when me and her got pregnant, because we got pregnant on accident. We'd only been dating 6 months, and it wasn't expected. Now, fortunately for me, I knew for sure she was the one, because I had dated plenty of other girls that it would have been an absolute disaster.
I know that.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it was very, very fortunate that this is the Darielle, my wife, is the one that the accident happened with. But we knew she was the one, and then everybody was like, because at that time in my life, I was working for a company called RX Muscle, and I was making like $4,000 a month. She was making $5,000 a month. She was making more than me, and everybody's like, "Are you sure you're ready for this? Children are expensive," and so for me, that was the moment. So instead of children being expensive, children for me made me rich, made me wealthy.
Love that.
Because
that's cool shit.
So for me, so I was like, my whole life, people said you're an underachiever, because they knew that I could. And I actually felt like this was a compliment, because they'd say you're an underachiever. I'd be like, well, that means I could be good. It's better than being like a retard. You can't do anything good. You're a moron. Everybody said you're really smart, but you're an underachiever. And I'd be like, that's cool. It's better than being like, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So for me, when we were pregnant with Asher, I said, okay, so it's not for me anymore. It's not just me, because I was happy with the little apartment we had. I felt very lucky to be doing something I was passionate about and making enough money to pay the bills. But I knew also on the flip side that there was a lot more that I could be doing. And when we were pregnant with Asher, I was like, okay, so now it's not just me being okay. I have to provide for this little guy who's coming. And I didn't have any choice. I felt like I didn't have any choice but to crush it. I was like, it's not about me. It's not about her. It's about this guy. And so that was really the impetus that got me to really focus and go from being an underachiever to, maybe an overachiever. And having Asher, obviously I have Aiden now. Asher's 7, Aiden is 4, Elijah's 2. And that's my motivation to go out and to kill it. That's the motivation to push really hard. And it's also my motivation now to build a legacy and to teach them what's right and what's wrong, and teach them hard work. And so you saw, like you said about Asher, my 7-year-old coming. So for Black Friday, we did a lot of orders. We did tens to 70,000 plus orders. So for that, we didn't have enough people in the business to actually pack all the packages. So we asked for everybody to bring in, if they could, a brother, a sister, a wife, whatever. So myself and my wife worked packing boxes, and everybody else did. Everybody from the graphics department to the development team, everybody was basically forced to work. Me and my vice president here, Kurt, joked that it's like Hell Week for Black Friday. Everybody's got to come. It's gonna suck, but at the same time, it's gonna build a team unity that's different, because we do team building every 6 weeks. We do something cool together that's unrelated to work, but it's always fun stuff. And obviously, team building happens in sucky stuff too. Sometimes better, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes more effectively.
Yeah.
And so
they make the movies about that shit.
Yeah, literally, right? So we did it together, and we worked, and it did suck to some degree, but also for me personally, it's a nice change. I feel like I don't know why, some people probably will understand this, but for me, like manual labor stuff where I'm actually accomplishing shit and like getting done. Also, there's some sort of like fulfillment that I get from stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I said to my son, my oldest son, I'll give you $1 an hour to come pack boxes. And he was so motivated, and he came to the office. And the first day he only could work 4 hours because my wife wanted to go home to the other kids. And the next morning he woke up and he goes, I want to do all 8 hours when we do the whole shift.
Oh man.
So we did three 8-hour shifts in a row. So it's 24 hours a day till tonight. So it'll be 6 days, 24 hours a day to pack all the boxes. And so
wow.
We went in and he worked the whole shift, and he did great. And
that's so
because
cool.
He finished the shift, he got $20, which is a huge deal. So he has $24 that he's saved up now. And so, for me, that is such a big deal, and teaching them work ethic and teaching all of them. My oldest one's 7. The middle one's 4. He's sort of like understanding stuff. But Asher, and 2 years old, you can't really, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I have a 9-month-old. I don't even know.
There you go. So for 7 though, they like get it. They're processing stuff. Sure. And so I do my best to teach him all the things that I wish that I would have learned as a little kid. Understanding, self-confidence, never quitting,
love that,
working hard. All those things that nobody. I mean, when I was a kid, nobody taught their kid. The things that I'm teaching Asher and Aiden now just wasn't a thing. My dad was awesome. My mom was awesome, but they didn't teach me about, self-confidence and hard work and, how to treat other people and those type of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. And thank you. That's why I wanted to ask. I think it's really cool. I think it's really appropriate to be able to do that with your kids. And I always, no matter what level of success or however I quantify success, I always want to afford that opportunity for my child, for my daughter, and for my future children to be able to work and be able to instill that work ethic. Because I know I started working young as well, and it really did shape it. Like, I didn't need to work. Like, my parents were fine, but going out there and working, I was working at an auto shop, I was working refereeing, pizza shops, not fun stuff really, except for actually the pizza shop was actually pretty fun. But other than that, it wasn't that good. So be able to instill that work ethic in a kid and be able to involve them with this is what dad does, this is what daddy does, and to see what you're doing during the day and to be incorporated in that way as well. And I also wanted to touch on the relationship with your wife, if we may, for a moment. So my wife and I, super quick synopsis, why I'm asking this question, because I know there's other people out there that listen to this that obviously are in relationships. So I obviously have a day job, then my night job pretty much is this podcast, and then on top of that, my wife and I are starting to get into real estate investing. So we're working together. And it's interesting, but it's also through all the things that I do, and then we're raising a 9-month-old baby girl, it's really hard to keep that, and being a first kid, it's hard to keep up that spark of the relation. It truly is. We're fine, but there are really hard times, So how do you, through all the things that we just discussed, having 3 boys, which I'm sure is a full-time job as well. And then, and then the company, and then everything that we're doing. But what would your advice be to me or to anybody else maintaining a relationship in that sense?
Absolutely. So for me, when me and Darielle got married and stuff, I was very fortunate to find somebody who's not just a great partner, but also very supportive of me and understanding, because, the things that I've had to do, the hours that I've worked and stuff are not normal. I may have to travel a few times a week, sometimes for meetings, I may have to do stuff. And, last night I forgot all about these guys from the military coming to visit. So I ended up going to a hockey game with them last night after we had just come back from another trip. And it's a lot of wives and girlfriends would be like, oh, you're not spending any time with me, and she has been very selfless and understanding that this is all trying to build a business for us. It's not me going and having fun. I'm having to do things that I'm having to do. Right. And so she's been super supportive. And the other thing is that we've been lucky enough that for a while now, since Asher was born, I've been able to make enough money that she has not had to work. So she is, for me, it's very fortunate that I have a very traditional relationship where she is fulfilled and excited and happy to be the mom. Right. With 3 kids, it would be very difficult if I didn't have that kind of support at home. So I would not want a nanny or to be in childcare and stuff. For that, I wouldn't want that. It would make me feel more uncomfortable. I don't know if that makes sense.
It 100% makes. My wife actually takes care of our daughter as well, and I'm more than thankful to be able to afford that opportunity as well. So some of the things that you're saying, I'm like, gosh, they it's like, what's the say? Behind every strong man is a strong woman, right? But I changed the quote the other day, and I was like, literally, this woman is next to me. Fuck behind, like this woman is next to me. Like there's no way. And you're absolutely right about like, I love that she's able to raise her. I love that she's able to be here, and that I can see them, and that I know that this person is raising my daughter, and that is the person that I love. And I think that's incredible. So it's cool to see that she's so supportive, and like I wouldn't have success without her, so it seems like that's what you're saying as well. And I think that's really cool 100%. To be able to keep that up.
100%. I can't imagine it any other way. And so I was very lucky with that. The other things I would say is that two things, and some of this is like probably a genetic component, and some of it is the decision, is that me and her, for me, I think it's almost like a character flaw. For her, I think it's a character strength. I forgive people very fast. And so it's come back to haunt me a few times in my life where I forgive people that I should maybe like keep away because they do something wrong. And then I like, whatever. Because for me, things have gone so good in my life, especially recently, that a lot of times I forget about things that happened in the past. And sometimes by doing that, you can have it repeated. But for our relationship, both of us have the ability to get into a fight and then not forget about it necessarily, but move past
on.
It.
Yeah.
So I have friends and coworkers that have significant others that will hold on to stuff for a long time. And I've been very lucky that that's not in Darielle's personality. So we may get into it. I mean, we fight just like anybody else. I mean, people fight, no matter how great a relationship. Somebody recently said, because you and your wife are amazing relationship goals. I can't believe you guys on social media are so amazing. I'm like, listen, that's because I'm not videoing her when we're fighting. Right? I'm not like, hey man, yell at me, let me video this. Right? Yeah. So, but we fight just like anybody else. And ultimately the big thing, because everybody fights, is like, do you hold on to that for the next week or two or month or year? Or do you move past it and say, okay, that doesn't mean anything in the scheme of things. Let's move past it and don't harbor that.
Yeah. What can we learn from it? Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And so she's great with that. She's great with that.
Yeah. Kind of coincides with like that thing you said earlier about the two behaviors that you would say to me is like bad things can turn into good things. So I feel like fights happen, and sometimes for dumb shit, obviously, like we've all been in relationships, but if you can be the bigger man or woman and move past that and realize, that was actually really dumb. So let's move past it. But also, like you said, you forgive and forget quickly. But yeah, as long as you actually said, as long as you remember, like, why? So we don't repeat the bad stuff constantly, and then we're in a probably worse position than we were. So
exactly right.
No, I think that's awesome.
Another big thing.
Yeah.
The other big thing I would say is to take time for each other, and that's one thing that we've been great at. Is that we make not just make an effort, we do it, so that we do date nights regularly. We go do stuff together. A lot of one of the things that I've heard in the past, but really she tells me, because I'm not interact with too many moms and stuff, but she tells me people will say it's selfish to do certain things. So for me, like to go, so like recently for her birthday, we went and did a staycation at a hotel or a resort down a few miles away.
Sure.
And so like some people would say, oh, it's selfish. You're leaving your 3 kids to go do that. So for me personally, that's like the least selfish thing you could do. Because if the parents don't get along and they don't have any kind of romantic spark and they're not in love or love each other anymore, you're doing a huge disservice to your children because that's how divorce happens.
Oh man, I love that. That's such a good point. Literally. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's again like people just seeing things from the surface and not understanding why things are happening underneath. I see that all the time happen. People go, oh my God, I can't believe they bought this house. Oh, I can't believe they have this or that. I was like, you have no idea the kind of shit that's going on behind the scenes. You have no idea how they get their money. It's, whatever. So I think the same thing is applicable to literally everything. And I'm glad you said that, because we've tried to do it, but we haven't been as successful as we've wanted to be. Speaking in that full transparency. So I think that's really good advice to me and to anybody else that is dealing with that as well. It's just like anybody says, like, if you subscribe to a growth mindset, you want to be a better person, you want to help other people, you better fully and wholeheartedly subscribe to that growth mindset and working on yourself before you can help any other. But if you don't have your shit together, you can't help anybody else. So I think it's really cool to see that comparison into parenthood and being like, well, okay, we said that about individuals, but now as parents, as this couple, in our relationship, we need to work on ourselves, because then we can be better parents. And I loved everything we've talked about, but I really like that. There was a reason I asked that, because this is our first kid, and that stuff is tough. And I know other people, there are other parents that I've talked to out there through the podcast, and they think I'm crazy for saying that they have time to do stuff. And I think all of these things are applicable. If you want to do it, you'll find a way. You got to work on yourself. You got to work on your relationship, and you got to make that 100% commitment that Aaron was talking about earlier, and just decide that you're going to do it, because the decision to do or to not do something is it's going to happen. If you make that decision,
right.
it's going to happen eventually. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And before we get out of here, I want everybody to know where they can find you, handles, website, things like that.
Sure. So I'm really easy to find. My name is Aaron Singerman, 2 A's, Aaron. Singerman, just like it sounds, singer, and then man, and then @ everywhere. So you can find me everywhere with that. And then the website is redcon1.com, and we're everywhere. So I'm easy to find, just my name, and then that's it. So
easy day, my friend.
Cool.
Aaron, like I said, man, I really appreciate your time. This has been a great episode. We covered a lot. We covered really good things, a broad spectrum, and then we were also able to dive down as well into a few of those topics as well, which is really, really important. So thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your night.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
There's another